this is Joseph Gillette with Venture Capital Cross, talking to you about the global healthcare industry. And this is a very high-level macro look at the healthcare industry. We've done some private deals in healthcare companies that are changing the way diagnostics happen, and some other companies, and also seeing big trends in public markets. So I wanted to compile a video and an article just about what we're seeing. And we think that at the end of the day, this is a really positive thing for people's health and for markets, but we want to caution against the traditional healthcare system. So we've seen a number of things happen triggered by Obamacare. So the problem with Obamacare is it created a monopoly type cartel, if you will, where you don't have a choice if you want to get health care or not. And all of us are examples of, we've all went through this. So everyone has a story of a friend who either couldn't afford Obamacare or just is paying the fines with the IRS. But what it did effectively is it increased the cost of healthcare by 500%, some people say 1,000%, and it decreased the quality of care substantially. For example, if you couldn't afford the gold plan and you got knocked down to the bronze or silver or however it works, then you might have a 6-month waiting list for a doctor that is in your network if you can't afford to pay out of pocket, and so on and so forth. Or it's the treatment that you want is not covered. And so then started this game. I mean, this was always a game with the insurance companies, but after Obamacare, it became almost their policy, where nothing is covered. So everything you have to fight tooth and nail for each of your claims, and they deny them by default. But if you call them and go through the whole process, upload the documents, explain what's going on, contact the doctor, spend several hours, they'll probably approve it. So that's all profit to them. So that was the first thing. Then the second thing was we had inflation, mostly in the last 4 years, from two things: the Fed, but also the White House policy, where they sanctioned the largest oil producer. By sanctioning Russia, along came with it all the BRICS and the Middle Eastern countries. So that basically caused a very hidden type of inflation that you didn't see, because the average tomato travels from Mexico to your dinner table 1,600 miles, the average tomato. So that's all gas powered. So when oil was being bought from other places and the price went up, that wasn't so obvious to people as inflation, but there were shortages of products for that, and it was a whole number of factors. But basically, in the West, you had the inflationary currencies, and then you have the commodity currencies, the BRICS and the OPEC nations, and so on and so forth. So there's been huge inflation, there's no doubt about that. But in healthcare, this accelerated the inflation in healthcare from Obamacare. And the best example is dentists. From Children's, a pediatric dentist charges $585 for a 20-minute cleaning where there's no cavities, there's nothing going on. And I calculated, and this is in the article, it would be, with all the chairs in that office, $1.8 million a month just from cleaning. And dentists typically make more money on orthodontics, surgeries, cavities, fillings, things like that. So something is not right here. And insurance paid for all of it, but the point is here that the system is broken. The traditional healthcare system is broken. The traditional system of you have a problem, you go to the doctor, they give you a pill, and you're happy, that doesn't work anymore. And the proof is during the COVID pandemic, there was mass malpractice. I don't know what else to call it. So you've got the ventilators, and I know people who died from ventilators, so I'm not speaking from some article I read. I went through the whole thing with people who I actually knew, and you have to get on a ventilator, but something like only 30 to 40% of people survive these ventilators. They're basically murdering people, and the ventilators had no benefit. It was just absurd what was going on. Then they started prescribing all these vaccines and toxic mRNA, genetically modifying things with graphene and all this weird stuff in their little things growing inside of people. It was really scary what was going on. And then you had this ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and all these other things, which were working, not because of some doctor said, but people were just taking it. The problem was they were cheap and they were easy to obtain. And so they banned them. They made them illegal, because if you have to pay $500,000 for the hospital grade high quality treatment in the ventilator process system, or you can get these ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine for $100 and you're cured, then why do you need the medical system? And this was a very egregious move on their part, because in hindsight it was really obvious that none of this stuff was working. So looking back, there weren't really any, like, there were, for example, studies that vitamin D was helpful and people were staying indoors and all that, and the doctors removed the vitamins from their suggested health practices. In other words, they shifted from a we want you to be well system to we're going to make you sick and then we're going to provide the treatment. And pain and suffering was always profit for Big Pharma. That's a known thing, because the problem is, let's say with cancer, late stage cancer treatments, they make millions of dollars from the last 6 months of your life. The medical system doesn't profit when you're healthy. So if you're healthy and you never go to the doctor, like many people, they don't have any way to tax you. So Obamacare basically forced you to pay for the health insurance that you don't need if you're healthy. The second thing is, if you have a disease, they don't want you to die, because then you can't pay. They want you to be suffering, but just enough that you need the treatment, and the treatment is expensive. I was looking into a treatment for hepatitis C, and there is a treatment now, a cure, basically. I mean, it's like pills, and it just goes away in your body completely. It's amazing stuff they have now. $13,000 if you don't have insurance. And I don't know what the insurance covered, but anyway, that's the cost of this treatment, $13,000. It's a lot of money for some people, especially for the majority of the population. If you're working class, you're going to have so many different inflated expenses that you might not have $13,000 lying around to do this. So the number one cause of bankruptcy in the United States, medical expenses. So add up all these things. You know, it's like a joke a friend told me. If you have a guy in a leather jacket in a dark alley selling marijuana to someone, that's a drug dealer. That's illegal. A guy in a white coat with glasses giving you pills, that's a pharmacist. Well, something obviously is wrong here. And legalization, I don't want to get into all that, but obviously marijuana and cannabis and hemp have shown all these positive properties, and that's why they've criminalized that, because they don't want to compete with something that you can easily grow at home and it's almost free. The reason they call it weed is because it grows like weeds. So there's all these things that Big Pharma and the monopolies are suppressing. So all these things are happening, but then there's something else happening, which is these monopolies, in chasing this pain and suffering profit model, they have been stifling revolutionary technologies. And marijuana is a good example because it's so well known, but that's not really what's really, really interesting. What's really interesting is things like cures for cancer, anti-aging technology, med beds that the military has. And there's vets now being treated by these med beds, and they're saying that they're going to be made public one day, and they just completely regenerate you. So those are just a few examples. There are hundreds of examples, and it's not the point of this analysis to go into all those different things. I'm sure that anyone watching this video has heard stories of some unusual cheap treatment that just came out of nowhere, some alternative medicine, and I'm not talking about this crystals or Chinese herbs or anything like that. Something like Mel Gibson said on Joe Rogan. He has a friend, stage 4 cancer, did something. It was cheap, not from a doctor, just something like hydroxychloroquine. Not that, but I don't remember what it was. But guy, just cancer didn't exist. And I don't know about that story, but Mel Gibson is a pretty straight shooter. The point is that there are these hundreds of these things out there. So you've got a situation where the public has lost trust in the doctor pill system. You've got doctors and hospitals that are incentivized to make people pain and suffering because they get kickbacks from the people making the I don't even know what you want to call it. And then, so the question is, EcoHealth Alliance was shut down. Are these monopolies incentivized to create diseases? And the answer is yes, because they make billions of dollars from it. So I'm not saying that they created COVID. What I'm saying is that the incentive is there for another group. Like, let me give you an example from when I lived in South Florida. I had a neighbor, and he was a little drunk. I saw him out in Clematis, and kind of at a restaurant type of place where young people were drinking beer, and he admitted to me something. He said he will plant nests of ants and bugs and roaches in neighborhoods, and then he'll pass out flyers. And he was a pest control guy. And I don't know why he told me that, but he just drank too much. And I always remember that. And I think, do other businesses do that? I mean, Wall Street can't do it because you can't kind of get someone to invest. But there's this old joke about the protection insurance where they'll break your window and then come to you the next morning and say, well, it's a dangerous neighborhood. Maybe we can help you with protection. And it was kind of like a nothing thing that the mafia created. And why do we think that big companies, these monopolies, wouldn't do the same thing? There's evidence that they have in many historical cases. So why not? I mean, finally, this is one issue that's close to me, is the Roundup case with the glyphosates, and the different chemicals they put in Roundup are highly, highly toxic. Roundup, I mean, Monsanto sells these GMO seeds, which can make giant corn and giant tomatoes, but the catch is you're stuck to those GMO seeds. So what they do, and farmers have found this, the GMO seeds will actually taint your natural organic whatever you're growing. So they've been found that agent provocateurs have been throwing the GMO seeds onto organic lands. Because what happens, those GMO seeds infect your soil to the point that only they can grow. And it's advertising your product. Now the farmers are then faced with this choice. Choice one, I grow the GMO corn. Choice two, I have to spend a lot of money to clean my whole soil, which isn't like, you don't just, I mean, you can't, it's not like cleaning your house. You have to remove the soil and put treatment and all this to get this GMO, because it's in the ground. They spray it like a dust. It's like crop dusting, right? It's everywhere. And then there's other cases where they unintentionally, it'll just fly in the wind. But the point is that they have an incentive to give you problems. And it's like these guys like Alex Jones said, problem, reaction, solution. Well, that's a business model. That's not only how the elite control the masses, that's a business model. You create a problem, you offer the solution, and you get paid. That's a profit incentive. So I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot of things that can make people very healthy. And the big monopolies are hiding them. And now what's happening, those monopolies are being broken up, and that technology is going to be released. Probably not all at once, probably drip, 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 but anyway, it's already happening. And so because of this, there's a new market that's going to be created. It's like a blue ocean for healthcare. So that's the good news. The good news is we're going to have access to technologies that people just won't believe. It'll be like science fiction. And this is the caution of going long traditional, and I don't want to name any particular companies, but being long the traditional healthcare sector is probably going to be tough because you've got all this, you're competing with all these factors. So you're competing with angry people that lost loved ones during COVID, or people who were just injured and survived. that are probably going to sue. You've got all these negative things that were obviously being done. I mean, now that time has elapsed and we can go back and look at what worked and what didn't, we can see that none of these vaccines or treatments did anything to help people. All it did is it created a bunch of profits and injured and killed a bunch of people. So I don't think there's going to be hell to pay. There's not going to be like a Nuremberg 2, although a lot of people would like to see that. But that's not the point. The point is the monopoly healthcare system, or the traditional establishment healthcare, cannot just pivot into alternative medicine, because that's not how the whole system is set up. It's set up that you get sick, you go to the doctor, he gives you a pill, he gives you a surgery. Now, I have other friends that have had multiple surgeries that just weren't really even necessary. I mean, I had a dental thing with someone recently that, so one dentist is like, oh yeah, root canal, extraction, root canal, $2,000, ching, ching, ching. And then we went to another dentist and they said, never do a root canal unless it's just the last hope. And this other dentist gave us another treatment, another solution. It worked. No root canal. No, so I think that's pretty common, actually. And it's not only COVID, it's just, you see it in your day-to-day situations in healthcare. And the good news is we're seeing that change. So we're seeing this new system that's coming, but I would be very hesitant to go long traditional healthcare companies, whether it's pharmaceuticals or hospitals or just the traditional system. And a lot of doctors are moving to this new system, and I even saw some ads advertising kind of for $300 like a health kit that has all the medicines, like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and Tamiflu, and like 20 different things that can help you, that if you need. So next time you get sick, you can just use one of these things which have been proven to work, instead of going to the urgent care, because you can't go to the doctor anymore. You have to go to urgent care, which none of them are covered by your insurance, and it ends up being $350 out of pocket, so that they can give you some amoxicillin that doesn't work. So that's the point. We're looking at a shift in the paradigm of healthcare, the ending of a grand supercycle that has been going on far before World War II, probably since the Civil War. This system of healthcare has been, it was, I think, Rockefeller that got into it with the pill system in the 1920s, and it just expanded. But it's been a controlled monopoly, and any alternative health, and this is pretty much just a widespread idea, that the well-known health doctors that are trying to look at you as the whole picture, like a holistic approach. And I'm not talking about essential oils or something like that. It's just looking at your whole body, not just like, if you broke your arm, why did you break your arm? Were you in a bar fight, or did you fall down the stairs, or do you have some trauma that you're dealing with? In other words, it should be that your whole life is looked at, and the healthcare system doesn't do that. And the whole pharmaceutical aspect of it is toxic. I have another friend, and a lot of this is anecdotal, but it shows up in the evidence. I mean, you can read papers that substantiate all this, but the point is, we all know these stories, so that's evidence enough, and we see all these new technologies coming. So I had a friend who had a reaction to a chemical in the laundry detergent, and they tried everyone. They tried the non-hypoallergenic ones and everything. Nothing worked. So finally the doctor prescribed a pill. Well, that pill caused a side effect and a reaction that caused a rash, and then they give another pill, and finally they had 5 pills, and one of them was Prozac. And all these pills, then they had a disease when you have all these different pills interacting with each other, and the disease is called something like, you took too many pills. I'm not making this up. I forget the name of it, but it's a disease where all the pills have created such a complicated reaction in your body that doctors don't know how to treat it, and you have this like chronic side effect that the only solution is stop taking the pills, but then you'll have all these other problems. So it's a broken system. I wouldn't be long any of the traditional healthcare. That's the point. I wouldn't be short either. I would just stay away. If you really like healthcare, I would look at some of these new innovative things, and not all the new innovations are going to work out because it's a startup. You never know how it's going to do. But there's just so many out there. There's so many, and it's a big world. It's a wide world, and there's a lot of doctors who are behind it in the U.S. So this is not a foreign thing. But I would say that because of COVID, it made healthcare more connected globally, because every country reacted differently. So what it did is it forced people to work internationally on a sort of local level through Zoom and through social media and things like that. So they say that the U.S. is the leader in healthcare, and I would say that that's still true, but not the establishment. It's going to be the innovators, the movers and the shakers, the people who, like Peter McCullough, and doctors who really understood what was going on. They addressed it, they created a solution, and it just works. And I had an experience recently in my own life with a dentist like that, and I mean, these guys are just wizards. We should pay those guys the big bucks and not sports athletes, and we should just they're easy to find. It's very easy to determine. You've got good doctors and bad doctors, good dentists and bad dentists. It's not difficult to see what's going on. And that's where this is going. It's going to a more high quality, very high quality, with solutions that really work rather than profits. At the end of the day, should healthcare be private? And here's the big problem, because when it's private, and I'm not advocating for public healthcare, but the profit center has become pain and suffering. That's clear. They want to keep you alive, and just alive enough that you can collect your disability check and pay into the system. And that's a problem. And that doesn't have to be like that. And so these doctors who are really good, who are high quality, who see real solutions and help people, we need to figure out a way to incentivize them and not so much make a business out of it. So that doesn't mean we can't make money from healthcare. It just means that we need a healthy and quality way to do that, where it's a win-win, because the current healthcare system is a win-lose. People are getting sick and dying, and the healthcare industry is making money. So that's a complicated solution, and I'm not by any means saying I have the solution or what the solution is. It's going to take time for that to be negotiated and discussed. My point is, with this analysis, that we can see 90 or 99% reduction in the equity of the traditional healthcare industry, and it will be replaced by something else. So I'm not saying that there's not going to be any doctors in the future or anything like that. It's just that it's going to fundamentally change in ways that we don't really understand, because we can't see that many steps ahead, because we're not capable of that. And some of these things are super exciting, which we can talk about in other videos, but I think that drives the point home. So be careful out there in the healthcare, and stay healthy, stay safe, and do your own research. Don't listen to me. We're all capable of looking at things from a objective perspective, and it's exciting. There's going to be lots of opportunities out there. So stay safe. This is Joseph Gillette from Venture Capital Cross. Have a great day.